What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from the Token Minorities, and I am back with the round 1 upload of the Surge Format Summer Showdown All-Star Division Tournament. This week, this round, we are against Illusion, who is the coach of the Las Vegas Venusaurs. Make sure to go check out his channel. He's going to be linked down in the description below. I believe he intends to upload his match, potentially a team builder as well, so make sure to go check that out. So this is, of course, round 1 in the tournament. If you happen to miss the draft analysis for this team, I highly recommend you go check that out as well. I'll link that down in the description below. And in that video, I explain basically what the heck Surge format is and, why I drafted such crappy mons. And by crappy, I just mean lower tiered. All these mons really definitely have their own niche in every specific matchup, or in any specific matchup. But, if you want to know all the details behind why I drafted such low tier Pokemon, I highly recommend you go check out that Surge format draft analysis video. Again, linked down in the description below. Now, just for a little bit of a summary, basically I couldn't draft any mons that costed more than 10 points, with the max point value for any one Pokemon being 18. Being like Tapu Koko and like Lando T, stuff like that. Those are worth 18 points. I can't draft those. I can only draft mons that are worth 10 points or less, and put together a pretty cool draft in the process. But this week we are against Illusion. He is rocking the Amoonguss, Gligar, Hitmonlee, Quillfish, Archeops, Moltres, Electrode, and Cryogonal, with the Moltres being his Z captain. Now he has a very threatening team. He has some pretty potent offensive threats against my team. My draft being Gardevoir, Gardevoir, Swampert, Virizion, Rotom, Ghost, Ambipom. I'm trying to do this off the top of my head. I have a Houndoom, Probopass, and a Fracture for my draft. So he has some mons that are pretty solid against my team for sure. The Hitmonlee and the Moltres both do so much damage against my team if I don't check them properly. Moltres I cannot switch into. The Z Hurricane, that is a Z captain. He can spam Z Hurricane against my team and almost claim a kill, or at least a 2-hit KO on my entire roster. So that's obviously a big threat. I think that the Hitmonlee is also a pretty massive threat because it does outspeed my entire team after an Unburden, and he could easily run something like Reckless Choice Scarf for his Hitmonlee set, and that does a lot of damage to my team. Even Gardevoir, that quad resist Reckless High Jump Kick, does not appreciate taking it unless I'm invested in my defense. So yeah, Hitmonlee's kind of a threat for sure. I do have the Rotom that can switch into a High Jump Kick, but Rotom doesn't appreciate knockoff, so I am kind of expecting him to bring a Scarfed Hitmonlee in this matchup, maybe supported by Quillfish trying to Spike Stack on my team. I don't have a grounded poison type, so I would kind of expect him to try to run Toxic Spikes against my team, so I'm going to build a team that is able to combat that as well as possible here for this matchup, maybe even take advantage of it, because I do really expect him to try to bring it here for this particular game. So I'm expecting to see something along the lines of a Choice Scarf Hitmonlee, a Z-move Moltres, Spike Stacking Quillfish, definitely the Amoonguss to just generally pivot into my team. I think like a Rocky Helmet Amoonguss makes a lot of sense against my particular draft. It's able to deal with Swampert. It's able to probably deal with my Ambipom. I don't think any Ambipom set typically can beat an Amoonguss. It can switch into my Rotom pretty freely, switch into Probopass pretty freely, Virizion pretty freely. So we can switch into a lot of my draft. That's why I really expect him to bring Amoonguss. I also think Cryogonal is going to come because my Ice Resist are both weak to ground, and Freeze Dry otherwise is very spammable against my team. So I think Cryogonal comes as well. So really that just leaves that one last spot that's kind of teetering for me. I think he'll bring maybe the Archeops, maybe the... what's his other one? Gligar. I think that's between those two Pokemon for his other move, for his other bring. I think it's going to be the Gligar because it's able to defensively switch into an especially offensive threat. So that's kind of what I'm expecting here for this matchup. And with that in mind, let's take a look at the team that I'm bringing here for this week. Very quickly, not going to spend too much time on this. I'm not going to do separate team builder and battle videos, I don't think, for this tournament, at least not for round 1 due to my own time constraints. But let's jump into this team really briefly here. So I'm going to try to win this game with Gardevoir. I think Gardevoir is so good against his team because he doesn't have a Psychic Resist. His Psychic Resist is literally Cryogonal. I guess it's also kind of Gligar, and neither of which appreciate taking Psychic and Psy Shock. or Side Shock and Side Kick respectively. So that's what I'm going to try to win with. That's going to be my primary win con in this game. I can even run a Modest Nature on my Gardevoir. As you can see from my EV spread here, I'll be able to outspeed a speed creeping Electrode. If Electrode tries to creep me, creeping Archeops with something, then that's something I'll be able to outspeed with this EV spread. So I think that's pretty potent here in this matchup. Basically, all I really need to do to be able to win with this Pokemon is to get rocks on the field. I guess I don't have rocks on this team. What I need to do is to weaken the Gligar or maybe get rid of its Violet, and if that happens, then this will be able to blow through his team pretty easily. He can only really revenge me with his own choice Scarfers, or maybe with an unburdened Hitmonlee, and I'll have other countermeasures on my team, obviously, to be able to deal with those Pokemon, or with those sets. So, yeah, trying to win this game with Gardevoir, I think it's by far my best win condition. I have Healing Wish as well on this Pokemon to help support the rest of my team. There's a few Mons on this team as we go forward that you'll see really appreciate the Healing Wish support. I don't think I'll ever really click it, but let's be honest, he doesn't have a Psychic Resist. I really don't need any other move on my Gardevoir here in this matchup besides my Psychic coverage. Hidden Power Ice for a similar reason, just in case I might possibly need it against the Gligar if it becomes annoying for my team, but again, more often than not, I'm just going to be clicking Psychic or Side Shock. Next up is Baby Hexorus, the Fracture. This week, he doesn't have a Dragon Resist. He has no Steel type, he has no Fairy type, so we can run Mono Outrage, and that makes this set really fun to use as well. Now, I mentioned that Hitmonlee was one of his better ways to check my Scarfed Gardevoir, particularly if he is Scarfed or Unburdened Hitmonlee. Having a physically defensive setup Fracture is one way to help combat that. I think it could be very tempting for him to try to knock out my Fracture with a Reckless High Jump Kick from his Hitmonlee, but I actually survived that. I think the only way I might not is if he is banded, and if he is banded, then that means it is not a check to my Gardevoir, so I am okay with that situation there for sure. So this is just a really, really big threat against this team, obviously with no Dragon Resist, and basically how this is designed is that +2 with 20 speed EVs, I can outpace his fastest Pokemon outside of the Electrode. There's no way I'm going to outspeed Electrode without 3 Dragon Dances, so basically my goal then is to try to outpace that Archeops after 2 Dragon Dances as well, which I am able to do with this set. I also have Protect and Taunt for some kind of support moves on this Fracture, as with Protect, what I'm actually able to do is scout out what his Choice Scarfers want to lock into, as once I get up to +2 with this, the only way he can revenge me is with Electrode or Choice Scarfers. I think Electrode has a terrible matchup against my team, so I don't really expect that to come, but his Choice Scarfers, otherwise, it's really convenient for me to be able to scout out what he wants to go for in case I want to preserve my Fracture for later on in the game. Maybe I could pull a switch into whatever that Pokemon is. Plus, it allows me to just scout out in general how he's trying to respond to this, even with a defensive threat. If I'm able to see what he wants to go for with his defensive switch, and that could be helpful for scouting purposes there. Honestly, though, I just don't have anything else I need in that slot, so Protect is probably the most useful option that I could have had here for this Mon. Then I have Taunt to ensure that he can't recover up with his Gligar in my face, and as a result, I can weaken it down with this Fracture to maybe open up the door for my Gardevoir, or maybe even my Ambipom that I'll show you here a little bit later on. That's actually a pretty massive threat against his team as well. So that is the Fracture. Then I have Swampert Assault Vested. This is a way to help me deal with the Moltres. This is my only way to deal with Moltres, because otherwise Moltres just plows through my team. This set actually is able to take the combination of a Supersonic Sky Strike plus a Hidden Power Grass from a max special attack Moltres, so this is a pretty thick boy, and it's able to retaliate with most likely a Torrent boosted Scald at that point. It may not knock out the Moltres, but it puts it into range of everything else on my team, which is good enough for me. It definitely would not be able to take hits from anything else on my team at that point, so that's kind of the goal of this thing here. This set also allows me to take any hit from Cryogonal as well. Even as Specs Freeze Dry, I can take despite my 4x weakness, and I can pop him back with a powerful superpower, and I will not be surviving that move at all. So this is able to lure in both the Cryogonal, or either the Cryogonal or the Moltres, probably not both, unless that Cryogonal or Moltres isn't like specially attack invested, which I don't really expect. I think they're both going to be heavily special attack invested against my team for sure. So this should be able to lure in one or the other, removing one of the bigger threats on his team against mine, and at that point, the rest of my offense should hopefully be able to clean up the pieces. Then I have, I guess, Mirror Codes to help me out versus Amoonguss. I think it could work out that way. Then I have Houndoom, which is my dedicated Amoonguss switch-in with Early Bird as my ability, so I will be able to only go to bed for 1 to 2 turns at the absolute most, thanks to Early Bird. And most likely I'll be able to scare out the Amoonguss there whenever I switch in the Houndoom, probably on a Spore or on a Giga Drain. Ideally, I'll then be able to go for a sub as he goes into whatever his best response is to Houndoom, and with the Expert Belt and Max Special Attack investment and my Dual Stab plus HB Ice, he does not enjoy switching into this monster at all. So just a really good breaker against his team in my opinion. He doesn't really enjoy dealing with this whatsoever. Then I have Ambipom, which is a Choice Banded set. Because his only normal resist is Archeops, I might as well run a Choice Banded Ambipom. There's no reason not to. Plus, this allows me to power up my Fake Outs against a likely faster Hitmonlee than my Ambipom. I think if he brings Hitmonlee, it's almost definitely Choice Scarf or an Unburdened set. Like I mentioned before, this will allow me to nearly one-shot the Hitmonlee with a priority Fake Out, which is kind of ridiculous. So this is just really good against this team. Return is obviously spammable. Knockoff to get rid of the Eviolite on the Gligar or to get rid of a Rocky Helmet on, or sorry, the Eviolite on the Gligar or a Rocky Helmet on the Amoonguss. And then Facade just in case he wants to set up T-Spikes with his Quillfish, or just in case he burns me with his Flame Body Moltres. Then finally I have the Rotom, which is one of my Hitmonlee checks as well. With the Cobra Berry, I can take any one hit from the Hitmonlee if I need to, and I can fire off a Will-O-Wisp at that point. This also is my Defogger on my draft, so I will be able to remove the spikes if he decides to try to hazard stag, excuse me, with his Quillfish in this game. I do not want to allow him to have spikes or toxic spikes on the field. The only mon I'm willing to let get poisoned is my Ambipom because of Facade, obviously. So I'm going to pay a very close attention to the hazard game in this game. I don't have rocks on this team specifically because I was forced to bring, in my opinion, an Assault Vest Swampert, so obviously I can't have Stealth Rock on that, and Probopass just didn't really fit the team, unfortunately. But, you know, I think this is still a pretty solid team here going into this this matchup here. Now, with that said, we can go ahead and jump right on into the team preview, and as you can see, my opponent Illusion decided to bring the Cryogonal, Gligar, Quillfish, Electrode, Archeops, and the Amoonguss. So there's no Moltres, and there is no Hitmonlee on my screen, which is like, you know, what? I thought both of those matched up super well against my team, but, you know, it is what it is. He opted not to bring them, and that's just going to make my job much easier in this game here for sure. So with that said, you know, in terms of the lead matchup, I think I'm going to lead Swampert. That was basically my game plan all along, especially if he brought the Archeops. I think if he decided not to bring the Archeops, I would have been content with leading with my Houndoom, because from his perspective, I would expect him to expect me to try to lead with either Swampert, Rotom, or my Ambipom, all of which are beaten by Amoonguss, especially if it is a Rocky Helmet Amoonguss set. So that's why I expected him to try to lead with Amoonguss potentially if he did not have Archeops, but because he has Archeops, I'm expecting that to be his lead. So I'm going to lead off with my Swampert here in this game and see if I can win this game with my Gardevoir. It does still look very nice against the mons that he brought. The fact that he didn't bring Moltres means that there's one less bulkier mon to be able to take a hit from the Gardevoir, so all I really need to be able to do is to whittle down the Gligar / remove its Eviolite before Gardevoir will be able to win this game. Fracture also looks nice in this matchup as well, without the Hitmonlee to be able to easily revenge it with a Choice Scarf type Jump Kick or an unburdened speed boosting on the Hitmonlee. I think without that threat there, then Fracture looks a lot better as well. So both of my win cons are looking pretty good here going into this game. Let's go ahead and hop right on into this match here, as my opponent is going to issue the challenge. So of course, good luck to him, as I'm going to lead off with my Swampert as he leads off with Cryogonal. So immediately a threat is on the field. Unfortunately, this is one of my ways to deal with the Cryogonal, but because he opted not to bring the Moltres, I'm actually okay with taking this big hit here on turn 1. If he decides to go for the Freeze Dry, I guaranteed will survive due to my Assault Vest, but he over-predicts on turn 1, goes for probably a Hidden Power Ground, trying to catch my Houndoom, and we're going to retaliate with a Superpower, putting us at a huge advantage right away here on turn 1, as now he's going to go into his Amoonguss to easily check me with a Giga Drain or potentially a Spore. I have a dedicated switch into this in my Houndoom, so that's what I'm going to go into right now, as the Amoonguss is going to just go straight for a Giga Drain, which is fine. It does more damage than I expected though, and that's because it's actually a Life Orb Amoonguss. You don't see that every day, folks, but that means he probably is packing the Foul Play if I had to guess, and then Life Orb, I believe, does boost the power of Foul Play, so cool prep there on his part, as now he's going to go straight into his Quillfish, as I'm just going to fire off a free Fire Blast. I really saw no reason not to just go for that play, just in case he decided to go into something offensive like a Quillfish. Maybe if I had subbed on that turn, I could have just gone for a Dark Pulse and done more damage to the Quillfish, but you know, it is what it is. It also would have allowed me to actually see that this is actually a Choice Scarf Quillfish, so I probably should have gone for sub there on that turn. In hindsight, that would have been the better play, as I'm going to go into my Rotom just in case he wants to go for hazards, as you know, it was still in my head that I thought he was going to be a hazard stack Quillfish, and it turns out he is Choice Scarf and able to 2-hit KO my Rotom. So unfortunately, Rotom not able to do much in this game, but because he didn't bring the Hitmonlee, that is fine with me, and also because he's not a Spike stacking Quillfish, apparently, Rotom really wasn't super important in this matchup because those two roles didn't need to be fulfilled. So now, because he's locked into Scarf with Liquidation, I'm going to go straight into my Fracture and take this as my opportunity to set right up with a Dragon Dance. Now here, I did a calc, and I calced incorrectly, as what I saw was that a level 100 Amoonguss was able to do a ton of damage to my +1 Fracture here, with the Foul Play that he decides to go for here. I went for Protect just in case he had Spore. I wanted to see what his counter of choice was going to be for the Fracture, but so basically I saw that he went for Foul Play, and according to the calc, I thought a Foul Play would do like 70 to 80% to my set, and as a result it would be, you know, not worthwhile to try to go for a second Dragon Dance here, when in reality I probably should have gone for a second Dragon Dance and threatened to sweep his entire team from there. So you know, a little bit of a misplay, miscalc there on my end, but it works out because I'm able to do a lot of damage to the Amoonguss as well as a lot of damage to the Gligar here on switch in, get a little bit of a feel for the EV spread on this Gligar, and I think he's definitely bulky, leaning more towards physical defense. I believe he might be mixed defensive based upon that role, but it is always hard to tell on Wi-Fi. Here I do expect him to go for anything that's not named Earthquake, so I'm going to go straight into my Houndoom, and he just fires off a Toxic. I thought he might go for like a Roost, maybe even Stealth Rock if he wanted to on that turn. Either way, I did not expect him to go for Earthquake on that turn, so Houndoom was a pretty safe switch in there for me in my opinion, as now I'm going to just fire off a Hidden Power Ice. I have no reason not to. I probably would have subbed on that turn if I didn't get poisoned there, but even so, getting that chip damage off on Electrode is nice, just in case it's a Focus Sash variant. It's definitely a possible set for him to bring Electrode's frail enough to make a Focus Sash make sense, as I'm going to fire off the Hidden Power Ice. Now here, I know I can take any hit unless he has like Specs Electrode, so I'm just going to leave my Houndoom in and go for a Fire Blast and try to take this thing out, and he just gives me Amoonguss, which is fantastic as well. So we're able to get rid of the Amoonguss there on that turn, which that frees up Swampert a lot later on in the game as well. Swampert's just looking better and better and better as this game goes on. It's able to deal with his pretty much his entire team that remains right now, which is pretty fantastic. So here he goes into his Archeops, and again, I guess he overpredicts. I really wanted to Stealth Rock on the field, but I don't need Houndoom anymore. The reason I have Houndoom is specifically for the Amoonguss, and Amoonguss is gone, so I'm just going to stay in and get that easy free chip damage off on the Archeops with a Dark Pulse, put it into Defeatist range, which makes it far less of a threat here later on in the game, as he's going to be able to knock out my Houndoom with an Archeops, but Houndoom really, or with an Acrobatics, but Houndoom really did some damage against his team here so far in this game. Now here I'm going to go into my Choice Scarf Gardevoir because he has no switch in. The Gligar is weakened. There's no way he can switch into this move, so I'm going to go for a Choice Scarf Psychic and claim my kill. No way he can avoid that, as the Archeops is going to bite the dust here to a modest Psychic from this Gardevoir, as now he's going to go straight into his only possible response to this. That is the Choice Scarfed Quillfish, which was a very good bring, by the way. Being able to outspeed my best Choice Scarfer against his team in Gardevoir was a really solid option for him in this matchup for sure, as now I'm going to be forced to switch out into either my Swampert or my Fracture. I thought Swampert was the more likely switch in from his perspective, so I thought he'd probably go for a Liquidation on this turn, as that's exactly what he does. And what this does, because he's choice locked into Liquidation, this gives me free setup once again with my Fracture, and now that I know his best response is probably going to be his Gligar, I'm in a really good position to potentially sweep his entire team from here with my Dragon Dance plus Taunt combination. Now here, what I'm going to do after I go for the Dragon Dance is just go straight for the Taunt, expecting him to try to go for either Roost or Toxic on this turn, and as you can see here in just a second, that's exactly what he decides to do. He goes for the Roost on my Taunt turn, which gives me either a second Dragon Dance or straight for an Outrage. I thought he would try to go into his Electrode there on that turn. But the issue with that thought was that he's not going to be HP Ice, I don't think, against a team with the Swampert. He was much more likely to be Hidden Power Grass, so I actually should have gone for a second Dragon Dance on that turn to just ensure that my Fracture would be able to most likely win this game. So that was a misplay there as well. I think in hindsight I should have just gone for it. I shouldn't have been so careful around the potential for Hidden Power Ice Electrode. He was definitely HP Grass in this matchup. So I just go for the Outrage though. I'm able to knock out the Electrode on the switch in there, which is pretty fine. Now he's going to go into his Quillfish, and what's funny is I'm basically a Fizz Def Fracture, if you remember from the Team Builder, and what that means is that this max attack Poison Jab from Quillfish bounces. Go Fracture. So Fracture is able to chew the Poison Jab, go for the Outrage, and knock out the Quillfish, and now at this point all he has left is that severely weakened Gligar. It is in range of Outrage. All I have to do is defeat the Confusion chance to be able to sweep this game up with the Fracture, but unfortunately Fracture decides to smack himself in the face, and we have to prolong this game a little bit further by wearing down the Gligar through other means, but that's not the worst thing in the world. I do have other means. I have Ice coverage on my Gardevoir, I have Knockoff on my Ambipom to help me deal with this. I also have, obviously, nearly a full health Swampert, which is basically a Gligar counter. So I can deal with this, but obviously it would have been pretty cool to see Fracture sweep up the game here at the end. But Ambipom's just going to come in and go for the knockoff to get rid of that Eviolite, just to ease the burden on Swampert a little bit later on here as I'm about to switch into that. Differential really doesn't matter at all for this tournament, so I wasn't really concerned about losing differential by making this play. Now I'm going to go back into my Swampert, knowing he's probably going to go for a Toxic, but it shouldn't matter because no matter what, Swampert will be able to either take out the Gligar on its own or put the Gligar into guaranteed range of my Gardevoir's HP Ice. So either way, it was a win-win situation for me at this point in the game, as I'm just going to start spamming Scalds here against this Gligar. And as you can see, he's going to go for the Roost, a little bit of a misplay. I guess he didn't expect to outspeed my Swampert. I'm not really sure on that, but I am a minus speed nature Swampert, I believe. So there was no way I was going to outspeed Gligar, as the Scald, as you can see, just does an absolute million. And even as soon as he puts me into Torrent range, then you know Scald's going to just straight up blow back that Gligar. So this is pretty much checkmate at this point in the game. As you can see, the Scald, I believe, is going to get the burn here on this turn, which is just the nail in the coffin. So we are going to be able to pick up the victory here against Illusion and his Las Vegas Venusaurs. Just in one more turn, I believe he goes for another Roost, and then the next Scald will be able to take him out, giving us the 3-0 victory here in round 1. So good games to Illusion. Now I will, I guess, mention at this point that he revealed to me after the match that he actually prepped for the wrong team. So, I don't know how that happens, but he prepped for the wrong team, so some of the mods that he brought may not have been optimal for this matchup. I think he really should have brought the Moltres and the Hitmonlee. I think those both matched up so well against my draft. And, he probably regretted not having them a little bit as the match was unfolding. Probably over the Electrode. He really didn't need Electrode against my team. The other mons were fine. I didn't really like Archeops against my team either necessarily. Like, I already mentioned the mons that I thought he should have brought earlier on in the video, so I won't go back over that again. But, there were some things about the team that probably could have been better. The Cryogonal still was good for the matchup. The Amogus was still kind of threatening for the matchup, honestly. If he hit my Houndoom on switching with a Life Orb Sludge Bomb, that wouldn't have felt very good. So that could have been pretty scary against my team. Scarf Quillfish was really nice and convenient against my Scarf Gardevoir. So it's kind of an awkward matchup in that sense because he built for the wrong team, and some of the predictions I was making, some of the plays I was making were under the assumption that he had prepped for my team specifically. So, that kind of throws off how the match plays out, but all of that aside, we were able to pick up the win, and we're now in the gold bracket for this tournament. So basically what this game decided was if we were going to be playing in the gold bracket or the silver bracket. It basically is just a prize difference for the winner of those respective brackets here. But starting next week, we are in a single elimination tournament, so we could have lost this game and still been in the tournament, but if we lose next week, we're out, and that's not something that I want to allow to happen. So that about wraps up this video. We are going to have some transactions coming in before the next round because this is Surge format. That's what it's all about. It's about drafting and transactions. So we're going to try to improve this draft a little bit. I'm looking at a few different areas with my lower tier picks that I might try to upgrade, but Fracture's making a pretty strong case to stick around here for a little while longer, so, you know, maybe Fracture will stick around for another game or two because it did so well here in this matchup, but, you know, I guess we'll see on that. I'll make sure to inform you on what those transactions are before we jump into the next game next week. Next Sunday. So, yep, I believe that about wraps it up. Thanks to Crobat for the win, Danza for recording my game for me, and to Choice CJ for genning my team for me, and of course thanks to all who have watched this video. So I will see you all next week. Peace.